I am Randy, and we are going to discuss about the grading and reporting student performance. So before that, let us know the learning objectives. So first is we would understand that while the goal of grading is to provide an objective record of students' achievement, teacher professional judgment is essential to the process. So being clearly and explicitly about such judgment will enhance the validity of grades. So next is know how to use different approaches to grading, which includes the letter grades, the percentage correct rubrics, and standards. And next is to understand that grading is a process of comparison either with prior achievements, other students, or standards. Let's proceed with the introduction. So the professional judgment about the qualities of student work needs to be translated in grades and reports. So judgments are also based on the teacher's personal value system, and of course objectivity is always the goal. So in terms of objectivity, teachers want more objectivity than subjectivity in the process of grading, because of course documentation is expected, and in certain cases justifying grades becomes a legal requirement when grading the student's performance. Next is that objectivity is needed because grades are important uses. It, for example, is the class placements, the college admissions, and the scholarship awards. Next is that grades are also it also affects the students' self-perceptions and motivations. And next is it's impossible to eliminate professional judgments in the process of grading. So judgments are made before assessment. For example, is the difficulty of items, the content of tests, or whether the extra credit items will be included. So judgments are made after assessments are completed. So examples for those are the scoring short answer and the essay items. And lastly, the judgments that are made about how to determine final grades are those how much weight to each assessment, or to how to handle borderline scores. So the typical questions teachers ask is that am I grading the students too hard or too easy? So it will reflect on the rubrics that are based on grading the students. Then next is that should effort and improvement be included? So you will remove all the subjectivity in grading the students, and you will be basing on the required standards that are essential in grading students, to of course minimize subjectivity. And lastly is you will ask yourself if how do you assign grades to individual students based on the group works. So of course with this there are certain exceptions when in terms of group works, and you cannot compare the group works into individual grading, because group works play differ than individual performance. And next is that let's proceed with the grading decision making. So in some schools, teachers develop common understandings of what it means to grade fairly. So for advocates of standard-based grading, so highly structured district guidelines are recommended. Some districts allow teachers discretion about the grading practices, or for example is that each teacher develops a personal philosophy of grading that translates into what they do. So that is okay as long as it is applied to all and no students are being exempted or being put into special way of grading that would result to subjectivity. And next is that it's important that teachers understand the differences or the different purpose or function that grades serve. And of course the types of comparison standards that are used. And lastly is the need to use methods and comparisons that best meet the grade's major purpose, which are the grades often serve several purposes or functions. In summary, an important function of marking and grading is to provide students with feedback about their academic performance. So although teachers should strive for a high degree of objectivity in grading, it is important to understand the role of professional judgment. So when grading, teachers negotiate external constraints, for example, those are grade policies or the limited time, and their professional values related to the assessment. So teachers need to provide a sufficient level of detail for grading to be informative to students. So in general, use non-academic factors such as effort, attendance, student aptitude, improvement, and attitudes only for borderline cases. So the grades communicate comparison between students' performance and the individual's prior performance or aptitude, or those individual students' reference. So but between student performance and the performance of other students, or the norm referenced, or between students perform and the predetermined standards or the standard based. So the percent correct is the most common type of standard based grading. So the percentage correct depends on the item difficulty. So the motivation is enhanced when grades are used formatively as well as summatively. So to communicate internal attributions, self-efficacy, progress of masteral goals, and intrinsic value.